Good morning, everyone. This is Deb Henton, MASA Executive Director, welcoming you to an MASA informational session. We are very lucky to have Jill Johnson with us today of Class Intercom. And she has a really great topic that I know obviously has interested many of you and has really gained, I think, traction over the years in getting to student voice. And in this particular informational session, she's going to talk about students helping to promote your school district or your school. So welcome, Jill. Welcome to everyone. If you could please turn on your cameras to the greatest degree possible. I know Jill would love to see your face more than she sees mine. So thanks for considering doing that. And again, thank you, Jill, so much for hosting this session.
Yes, and thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here and to meet all of you. And I know you have busy lives and you're probably doing multiple things and multitasking. So happy to be here and happy to share with you from my experience as well as education and knowing that I lived in your world for many, many years. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about my background too. I'd love if at any time you guys have questions for me, if you want to put those in the chat. Also, jill@classintercom.com is my email. So if you hear something along the way or you missed something and you want to ask a question later, I'm happy to follow up with those and offer any insight I can from my experiences. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in here and share my screen with all of you. And we'll get going here. So today we're talking about building a team of content creators specifically for your social media. I do have a QR code up on the screen there. And I was just chatting, we can share these after the fact too. So, you know, if you don't get it or don't have your phone available to scan, but that is an ebook that we put together. It's a how-to guide for building a team of content creators. So some of the things that we're talking about today are in there. There's a ton of downloadables that might help you as well as you're trying to empower other content creators. I'm very passionate about allowing students to create content, but everything that we talk about today can really be applied to the adults in your district as well, because there are so many stories happening all the time, and we want as many people as possible being able to capture those. So, so that's on there as well. I will share this QR code again at the end. So if you have, you know, if you didn't get it right now as we move on. So I know I'm talking to the Minnesota Association of administrators, but I know we might have other people in the room, and I know sometimes on Zoom in this way we don't get a lot of back and forth, but I'm guessing some of you superintendents, principals, maybe we brought along some other tech integrationists, classroom teachers, maybe library, or maybe even comms. Or if you were like me when I was a high school administrator, I got charged with the duty of communications and PR just because we weren't quite big enough to have that as a separate role at that time. And so I know many of you wear multiple hats as well. And so all of us have a different story, but we do have similarities in that. And so again, if I say something today and you're going, okay, but how does that apply to my situation? Or here's something unique about my district, can you help? Again, I'm happy to do that. It's one of the things I love. I'm a 30-year educator, and so helping people and supporting them in what they're doing is really at my core. So always love to be able to do that. So I do want to give you a little bit of my background. I was a classroom teacher for 17 years. I taught high school language arts, so English, speech, journalism, did some with yearbook and school newspaper just a tad early in my career, did a lot of dual credit later on. Also worked professional development for what we call ESUs. I am located in Nebraska. And we are having a beautiful 70-degree day here, which is very unusual for us to get some nice weather. So, so we're loving that when it's usually hot and humid at this time. But so I was doing that, and then I got into school administration. And so when I became an assistant principal at a high school, I was dealing with a lot of things. I wasn't specifically in charge of discipline, but I did help with it quite often, especially when it came to things with social media. And so we were dealing with a lot of the negative of social media. Students, a lot of times it was when Snapchat was first coming out. They were doing things outside of school that was then disrupting the school day. And then as school administrators, we were having to deal with that because it was disrupting. As someone who's a learner, I was trying to look at the research, figure out what can we do? How can we help these students instead of just kicking them out of school? On a suspension, how can we work with them? Because otherwise we were sending them home for 3 days and then they were just on social media 24/7. There wasn't a lot of research out there. At the same time, again, I was charged with that kind of other duties as assigned as doing school communications. And so along with that, I was charged with doing social media as well as unifying our brand and some other pieces there. And so what I was really finding was that we really needed to, try to find out what's the best way that we can harness this and help tell our story. I was also drowning in trying to keep up with social media and all the activities. And so again, I didn't find a lot of research. So I was in my doctoral program. Whoops, sorry about that. Did not mean to click on that button. But I was trying to work on that and ended up doing my dissertation research in technology leadership qualities in secondary school principals in Nebraska specifically, who support student-led social media teams. And so because there was a lack of research, I really wanted to try to find out what's going on. Why are some schools allowing students to create content? Why are others not? And then that really led me to where I am today and being able to get to that. I can share that link with you. That link will be in the presentation as well, if that's something that you're interested in looking at a little bit more. Okay, so I want to just give you a very quick background. Obviously, I was in education for 30 years. I do work for Class Intercom now. This isn't a sales pitch, so I just want to get that like in a nutshell so you know kind of how I got here. And if you ever want to learn more about that, happy to help. But Class Intercom is a social media management platform that's specifically made for schools. And it came when our CEO was actually presenting to a group of about 100 students in York, Nebraska. And they were talking about social media. And 4 sophomore girls in the front row were on their matching Chromebooks. And they were actually posting to their school's social media. And he was like, how are you doing that? Because they did not have an specific adult from their school with them. And they had little sticky notes on their keyboards that had all the school's social media usernames and passwords written out on them. And he thought, wow, what could go wrong? And so the software that he had already developed, he decided to try for schools. And that's kind of how Class Intercom was born. It's also the solution I was looking for. And so these are just a few of the things that we do. We allow you to plan and schedule posts, archive social media, monitor and moderate it. So things have to be approved before they go out, include multiple points of view, empower your staff members, provide oversight, and then maintain those consistency of standards. So like for me, I was able to empower a team, but I didn't have to give up the control that I like so much. And so I just want to share that with you because some of the things I'm referring to, Class Intercom is the solution that I use, but it isn't something that you have to be able to implement what we are talking about today. So here are some of the problems that maybe some of you are facing, and I think addressing these would be helpful. And if you have others, I'd love to dive into those too. So here was my problem. I was really jazzed about telling the school's story. I was telling my teachers, share your stories with me, send me photos. I want to promote this. And some of my teachers really bought in right away. But this is an example of a text I received one day. It had these three pictures on it. And I'm like, this is cool. What's happening here? And so I tried to start to put together a social media post. And I honestly couldn't figure out exactly what they were doing. I didn't know the goal of the lesson. I could kind of guess. But trying to make a post when you don't know what's actually happening academically really can kind of make you sound like a moron, to be honest. And so, I didn't feel comfortable posting it. So I texted her back, and then it wasn't till the end of the day that she could get back to me. And then I was at an event. And then this post didn't get made till like more than a day later. And so what was happening was we weren't getting a full story. It was really messy in how we were collecting that. The teachers who were wanting to share, then there was a delay. So it's kind of a problem. And maybe some of you can relate to that. Here are some other issues that maybe you're having too. Maybe it's a lack of student voice. I get questions every day now about, people keep talking about student voice, but how do we promote that? How can I feel safe about allowing students to share and know that it's going to be on brand with our school? Maybe you have so many activities, you can't get there, you can't be at everything. Maybe you're kind of getting beat up a little bit. I know I used to get beat up, or our team did, because they said we were only an athletic school. It's all we ever posted about, which really wasn't true. But it's also where we were, because that's where we always had to have a supervisor. You don't typically need to have, administrative presence to make sure you don't have fights at a speech meet. And so, those were kind of things that we were dealing with. Maybe it's inconsistent messaging or inconsistent time posting, inconsistent pace, all those kinds of things. Or maybe you're only on Facebook and not on Instagram. Maybe it's those rogue accounts. So if any of you are dealing with just a multitude of accounts that are out there popping up every day using your logos. I know in my case, when I was asked to unify the brand, Twitter alone, I found 37 Twitter accounts that were using our logo. And they were all posting positive things. And so it was really thinking about reining those in. Maybe you're doing informational posts only, and you're really not sharing the great things that are happening, those awesome classroom stories, those great community service project things that are happening with your students. And then maybe a lack of accountability or oversight. So maybe you have one school that's doing something great, or one teacher or coach who's doing something great. But then you have other ones who just make you nervous every time they post, that you're worried it might just be a little bit off color or not great representation of of your district. Maybe your social media is reactive instead of proactive. So maybe you're constantly battling people who are coming at you in a negative way. And then maybe there's a negative culture. Maybe it's a negative online culture. And we're going to talk a little bit about the positive things that can happen with your in-person culture when you have a positive online culture as well. And then something, again, I hear about every day is comments, whether people are hiding them or they're hijacking them, or, just you always constantly have those groups or some of those that are coming in at you and making those comments and what you can do legally. So a lot of issues that you might be facing, we're going to try to counteract many of those as well. And again, if you have questions, be happy to, if you want to put those in the chat or follow up with me after. So throughout this presentation, I've been out of the actual school system for a little over 2 years now. So I love sharing stories from other districts from across the country. So I have these throughout this presentation. These are all also people that would be more than happy to chat with you, depending on where you are in your social media journey. So this one from Mike in Sheboygan Falls in Wisconsin, they had zero social media presence when I met him about 1.5 years ago. So he was starting from zero, but they were in a place where they were competing for students. And so because of open enrollment. And so they were trying to figure out a way, how can we really help grow this? So they wanted a system that created consistency, as well as something that would prioritize storytelling and all the good things that their staff and students were doing. So it was bringing in all those rogue accounts and then making it really easy. So that was really their goal. And so as they started to look for the solution, and I kind of share this because I think you want to really know what your purpose is and what you're trying to do as you get started. Are you trying to increase student voice? Are you trying to grow your enrollment? Do you really want your engagement? Do you have a negative culture? All those problems we just listed, what really is the solution that you are looking for? And so here are some of those things. And so what I was looking for when I was doing this was much simpler. I was overwhelmed. I couldn't be at everything at once. And so my aha moment when I started empowering students to help me be collectors and creators of content was that it really relieved my workload. And so my big aha moment, I was at a marching band competition in the fall, and I was there as a supervisor. I was also taking video and pictures, and I was posting them on our social media. But at the same time, that Saturday morning, I was also getting posts for golf, for cross country, for volleyball, and for quiz bowl, all from different students. And we were kind of around the state or our area at that time. And I was able to take a look at them, edit them, approve them, and send them right out. So maybe they had a misspelling, I could correct it. Grammatical error, correct it. Forgot a hashtag, correct it. I could double check the photos, make sure no one was throwing an inappropriate hand gesture or anything like that, that we look for as school leaders. And so all those things, and I was able to push right out. And it was so great because otherwise my typical Saturday evening would have been trying to go gather the volleyball scores, try to figure out, okay, we got third place. Do I have a mom friend on Facebook who will send me the picture and let me use it? And so all of a sudden, these became real time. We had great photos, great information, and everything done in a very timely manner, just by empowering more people to be able to be content creators and storytellers for our district. I'm a big believer that if you don't tell your story, someone else will. And so we started to really see this unfold. And so as this was happening, I thought, gosh, I need a plan. This could get out of control very quickly. I all of a sudden had about 50 students, as well as a large number of staff members really getting involved in the content creation. So this was the plan to really recruit, train, retain, and sustain. And that ebook, if you grabbed that at the beginning, you're going to see that same outline in the ebook as well. So first of all, recruit. So how do I go about getting students and even staff who want to help be the storytellers in our district? And so my big advice is to start small. So I ended up with 50 that first year, but I started really small. And my very first student intern was this young lady in this photo. And I actually was on lunch duty, which I'm sure many of you can relate to. And she was taking a picture of her foot and sending it to someone else. And so this was in the early days of Snapchat, and I didn't have a Snapchat account at that time. And so I said, Becca, what are you doing? And she explained Snapchat to me. And I knew right away that she was a content creator. She was wanting to create content. She was wanting to gather stories. She felt very comfortable with social media. And so I said, hey, do you want to be my social media intern in the fall? And she's like, what do I have to do? And I'm like, I'm not sure yet. And so we started it from there. And then it grew very organically, where the young man in the blue hoodie, he actually emailed me and said, hey, Dr. Johnson, I'd love to be an intern like Becca. I just had lunch with him about a week ago, and he just graduated with a degree in social media marketing. He's going to the University of Northern Arizona to be a grad assistant and creating social media for their athletic teams. So really giving students this niche kind of works twofold. It's going to help you tell your stories, but it's also going to allow you to give students this opportunity to create content. And then no matter what field they go in, they'll be able to utilize it. So Becca's actually getting ready to go to med school this fall. She's the content creator at KU, where she just graduated from. The young man in the Jays baseball, he's actually going to graduate in December with a graphic design degree, and he's doing an internship over here at Huddle just across the street. And then Jonathan's also doing video, but so it was very small, and these kids kind of started to come out of the woodwork, and they wanted to help be content creators. And I know all of you have them at your districts as well. So this example, this was from the Texas School Public Relations Association conference, and Courtney Nix shared it. a very big Texas district, but she started small. She had teachers and or principals who weren't on board. So she started with her early adopters, and she asked these first 8 administrators to really be a part of it and help in the content creation and content gathering. And by February of that same school year, she was already up to 58 certified content creators who were ready to help tell the story and really wanted to offer that. So I think you guys know in whatever we do, it's difficult to get 100% buy-in right away. But what we see with our districts who do it incrementally, start with those people who are already excited. They understand that social media is a really important part of school storytelling, school recruiting, whether that's students, staff, bus drivers, paraprofessionals, whatever it might be. And then other people are going to see that and they're going to want their story told too. And so they're going to then start sharing and be able to add. I think you can tap into already established groups too. So after I had my first couple interns, I went to the journalism class. And so these students were, working all year, gathering content, but it was just for that one big yearbook that actually people didn't even get till the following school year. So they were very excited to have their photos, their articles, all those kinds of things be seen much sooner. And so they were always together. They were in this class every day. The teacher was on board and they weren't really having to do anything extra except for pick their best pieces and share them out on social. And it also gave them more drive and desire to be creative. So I grabbed them. I then also grabbed our digital marketing class. And the following year, we were able to start a multimedia class too. So we were able to use students who were in a class as well as volunteers. And again, we were using adult volunteers throughout as well. This is from a school in Illinois, and what they did was they put it out as a job description, and this was for their students, and they were really recruiting them to be digital content creators, did it in a more formal way, but gave it a job description and really added some heft to being that content creator. And so they all of a sudden had a ton of students applying and had to go through a little bit more rigorous system to be able to kind of hire those students who were not getting paid, but were really wanting to be involved in the storytelling. Okay, so one of the things I want you to think about is preparing for cultural impact. So whether you know it or not, what you put out on social media can really come back twofold into the actual culture in your district. Now, I'm sharing from personal experience as well as some stories that I've been able to gather, but I hear this all the time from the people that I work with. This one comes from Scott Axe, who is the high school principal. He was actually just wanting to get students involved in their storytelling, but what he found was that it really had an impact on their culture. So they were using this hashtag show up for each other. They were really trying to promote students going to other events. So in this picture at the top, it's the girls basketball team, which was very successful, very popular. They showed up at a music concert with signs in their t-shirts, and were cheering on their classmates and schoolmates who were always coming to their ball games and playing in the band and all those kinds of things. They then were very quiet and respectful during the actual concert, but it really started to change the culture. This picture is of the football coach who'd been there for 20 years. And even though the marching band played at every home game for those 20 years that he was there, he had never seen the marching band perform because he was always with his players. And so they didn't even realize it. So what he did, he loaded up their buses and he went to a Saturday event, because it was a very competitive marching band school, and they went and watched the marching band perform. And so they really started to see this cultural impact, and the principal saw that twofold on him, where he was really seen as the disciplinarian, the hardcore, wasn't necessarily that popular in the community. These are his words, not mine. But what happened was, even when it was time for a homecoming dance and they were going to share out the rules for the homecoming dance, and it was kind of that no grinding time, I think all of you can probably relate to that. Rather than putting out the rules of what they can't do, they made a fun video with the principal demonstrating dances and dance moves. And it really started to change the way they looked at him too. That although he was the disciplinarian and was the leader of the building, he also could have a lot of fun. And so that cultural impact really started to have some power there. And they were really controlling the narrative. Another cultural win, this is at Wilson Elementary in Texas. Holly Kirby, and we do have a case study coming out on Ms. Kirby coming up here soon. But she was the principal there. She has all of her teachers post about their classrooms weekly. She does monitor that. They have someone who monitors and makes sure, the teachers know which students can't be on social, that kind of stuff. But she started to be able to have these wins where she's getting a lot more requests for people to come to her building, and that's including teachers. And also she just got to hire the AP that she wanted, even though there was a lot of competition for him in their district. That person wanted to come to her school because of what he was seeing on social from the classrooms. Another cool story that she shared was how a picture of her going, she's a principal, a picture of her coming through a slide tunnel on the playground, and then kids were outside of it high-fiving her, went viral. Another one that got a huge following and a ton of likes and shares was a teacher sitting and reading at story time to a group of kids. Now that might sound super simple, and you might be thinking that happens in our school all the time. And I think it happens in every school every day. But what we have to remember is that with COVID, with school violence on the rise, all the measures that we've had to put into place to keep people out has also pushed people out in a way that makes them feel like they aren't wanted, or that we don't want them there. I actually had a parent in my office once saying, I went to school here. My mom went to school here too. Why do I have to sign in? And trying to explain that because of school safety, but we still want you here. And so sometimes we have to push people out so far. Social media allows them to be a part of it and see these things. And so we want to make sure that people know the awesome things that are happening at our school, and that we're sharing those, even if they're as simple as a preschool teacher reading a book to the students, so that our stakeholders, our taxpayers, all those people know what's actually happening in our schools, not maybe what's coming through some of the media outlets that tend to pick something that's really, going to get better headlines. Okay, so we think about recruiting, we start simple, we start small, we get those early adopters, and then it's time to train them. And many of you are probably thinking, gosh, I don't have time to train. I already have a million other things on my plate, but I think we need to keep it simple. The only thing I asked for from my staff and students was accuracy in spelling, grammar. I always wanted a visual. And then we started our hashtag. And so once we had that hashtag, we were going to include that on anything that we did. And so these photos right here came from my students that first fall also, and they were capturing things that I would not have otherwise. And so I have to correct myself. The young lady who's in the shop, that was actually one of my teachers. And he was an awesome Woods teacher, CTE teacher, but he noticed that in his data, he didn't have very many females in his classes, and he didn't know why. He thought it was just a cultural thing. And so his professional goal that year was to get more females to sign up for his woodshop classes. And so one of the ways he did that then was promoting it on social media and allowing the few girls who were in there to really serve as role models for others that were coming in. So it became pictures of females doing it, females being accepted in there, and a lot of those types of things. And so even just with those simple rules, you can really have these broad, complex types of challenges that you're taking on and really be successful in it. If I do have any school public relations professionals on here, I know that one of the things you're probably thinking is that people can't take pictures as well as I can. They can't do graphics as well as I can. They're not as good as writers. And that's 100% true. But what we can do is we can even give people credit for these. So maybe in your posts, you could even put the little camera icon or a little pen icon and give credit to, Nathan, sophomore, or Sally Smith, first grade teacher. Go ahead and give them credit. And again, it's a win-win because you're giving them credit. You're also letting people know that it's not you or it's not the adults in the building. What I found was that people were much more forgiving when we had students make an error on something that went out as opposed to an adult. And so I think it really shows you that you're willing to sometimes put that storytelling in the hands of those that are living it. Whoops, let me go back here. So another piece with Keep It Simple, this came from a school in Arkansas. And this person was a public relations person. He had me come in and help him train a group of students because he wanted just a couple student interns. He put out the call and he had 55 applicants. And so all of a sudden, his social media team tryouts became more competitive than any sports team in this large district in near Little Rock. And so he ended up with a team. He compromised, picked about his top 22, I think were in there, and then gave them a very specific way that he wanted them to post. And so you might want to do this too. Like mine was even more simple, but on this one, he even said, select the channel and then write your message. He wanted the header in all caps and then a space and then a sentence explaining the post and then a space, then the hashtag. Then he used the little camera icon and had the students put their name there. And so doing that, all of his posts were very standard. He was able to get through them cleanly and clearly and give feedback right within the platform. So this is kind of what it looked like that day when we were training. Each of the students were coming through. They were making a post telling why they were excited to be there. Those are all pending until he was able to go through, give them feedback, make corrections, either delete or deny, or go ahead and approve those on for posting. And so it's made his life much simpler and also been able to really empower those students to help with the storytelling aspect. Okay, so this one, again, when we're thinking about training, these are just a few things. Again, this one comes from Texas, but I think social media guidelines and policies are good. We do have some of those on our website. Again, I'm happy to share samples of those. I always say, make sure you check with your whether it's your school lawyers, just make sure you can't make a policy. I know I'm not telling you guys anything you don't already know, but you can't make a policy at the local level that trumps state or federal law. So make sure you're well aware of that. And those do vary quite a bit state to state. So just be careful with that with your social media guidelines and policy. We also have in that ebook that I shared with you at the beginning, there are some downloadables for a content calendar. And so being able to plan that out sometimes on hard copy is nice. And then we do have certification right within our platform, as well as the 5 pillars of pedagogy that we base everything that we do on: storytelling, skill building, digital citizenship, student voice, and community. So we have a lot of things there for both adults and students to really grow. A ton of stuff that's free, so you guys can come in and grab that and use it as you wish. But again, if you can't find what you're looking for, happy to send that to you directly. All right, I'm going to see if I can play this video real quickly. Our Wi-Fi is a little bit off this morning, but this was made by one of our schools and at Carroll Senior High. And so I'm just going to see if this will play. It's only about a minute long, but it kind of shows what this can do when you get students really involved.
Racket Media has been utilizing Class Intercom for the past 2 years in our Convergent Media program. With students on 2 different campuses and in 3 different programs, we needed a way to make covering events at Carroll faster and easier. Class Intercom has given us a way to streamline our social media needs across all of our classes. We love that our students can label their posts so that we can give them credit for their work. It's so easy to make edits and approve the posts and keep a record of what we've done. And it's incredibly helpful that we can receive notifications when our posts are submitted and post right from our phones, no matter where we are. Because of the ease of the CI website and app, we are able to keep FLC Dragon Media up to date for our community and teach our young journalists the importance of timely coverage.
And I like sharing that just because that was an unsolicited video. I happened to be at a conference in Texas, or no, I was at the National Journalism Conference, and they shared that. And all of a sudden I was like, wow, that's super cool that their media club was able to utilize that and be able to have that go through that system to really control what was going out. Okay, so we've recruited, we've talked about training and keeping it really simple. And so then it's thinking about retaining and then also sustaining that system. So one of the things I really think you want to do, this is with adults and students, you want to make it a big deal. And so one of the things we started doing early on was making press passes. We thought it was a little bit cheesy, but I told students, hey, maybe it'll get you into a game free. Go to the concession stand, see if they'll give you free popcorn. I said that tongue in cheek jokingly, and yet they ended up going to the concession stand. The concession stand gave them free popcorn for being the social media reps. And so now it's become a thing that's still there in the district 7 years later. So now when those passes are handed out, it's kind of like a rite of passage, and they wear those with great honor. So these are those first 2 interns wearing them at a football game that first year. We also made locker signs where we put those on the locker. In our building, the only thing that was allowed on student lockers was things that had to do with school. So a lot of times it was the sports teams that had their participation up on the lockers. And so again, this really filled a niche for a lot of students who wanted to be involved that maybe weren't athletes or weren't leaders, or they're super shy. Being able to be kind of behind the scenes, but yet involved, really gave them a lot of power. And that's one of the things that I really took the most pride in, was really helping them find their place. And people noticed it and really started respecting that as well. Another thing I think you need to do is celebrate success. I believe this in everything that we do. I don't think we take enough time to celebrate because we have so many other things on their plate. So again, in that ebook, there's a ton of downloadables. I think there's at least 10 just for this specifically. But this example that I'm sharing with you, Heather is one of our clients. She does a great job with students. She called me one day and was like, Jill, my kids are just crushing it. What can I do to celebrate them? Because I just want to encourage them so they keep going. This is when she had first started her student team. And I said, Heather, you just said it. They're crushing it. Buy them some Orange Crushes and tell them to stop by your office and pick them up and tell them great job. And then she took it another step and made these thank yous. She put their faces on it, wrote them a quick note on the back, and then also put that out on social media too. And so those little things can go a long ways. And if you're not Pinteresty or creative, like I said, there's things like that all over on the internet, but we have at least 10 of them that are already pre-made for you. And then you can customize them with your own logo and everything. And those are all free in that ebook. These are a couple that Courtney shared with me. These were for adult ambassadors that they had in their different buildings on their campuses. And so she just told them, thank you. I think she gave them some candy or something with this. I can't remember for sure. But then she also put the certification as well as a September challenge that she was doing. And I think if you can scan that, you can still get to that. But she was doing some things early on to really get them excited, telling them what they should post about, challenging them to do that, and then putting their names in a drawing to be eligible for prizes, just to really get it going. And she said after those first couple months, she didn't have to do it again. Same thing, this may sound corny, but I just wanted to say thank you. And again, there's that October calendar offering some of that, as well as offering her number and contact info to be helpful. All right, so we've recruited, we've trained, we've retained. I remember I was going across the state that first year with those 4 students I showed you in that original picture. And all of a sudden I had this sort of panic moment of, these kids are all seniors and they're doing the organization, they're recruiting other students, they're training other students, all these things. What am I going to do when they graduate? And so sustaining a system really became super important to me. And so I think one of the really big things is you want to make sure you know your why. So you came to this webinar to learn about social media, building a team of content creators. So think about, what is it, your why that you want? This particular one, this group that I work with wanted consistency, simplicity, and storytelling. I shared Mike's why with you at the beginning as well, because different things will happen depending on what your purpose is and what your why is. Okay, so Heather had her why, then she also had her how. Where Mike didn't have any social media, so he didn't have a lot to deal with. It was almost just non-existent there. It had been snuffed. She had to think about eliminating all the separate social media accounts. She wanted to rein them in. She had to set up policies, run those through the school board, and then ensure that all the official accounts for their different buildings were appropriate. If you're wanting any help with reining those in, we do have a free audit guide that just can help you rein those in, gather passwords, gather usernames. That's one of the things that brought me the most comfort, was being able to keep all of those at the district level, so that then if a teacher left, a principal left, or they moved on to a different building, I could easily just take them off the platform. But the social media account stayed true. We kept all the followers, we kept the logo, we kept the name, and didn't have to worry about it. These are some of those policies and guidelines that Heather set up for her school. Again, we have a lot of these sample ones. We also have some templates that just would allow you to get started. Again, those are all on classintercom.com. And then here's another one. Just, I think tracking data is so important. And for you to be able to share this with your school board, maybe if you're an AP, it's with your principal. If you're a principal, maybe it's with your SOUP. If you're a SOUP, maybe it's with your school board. But I think it's as simple as tracking those followers and that growth, and then really starting to track your engagement. On our platform, we do archive and then allow you to run reports and data too. But sometimes, you know, we become very data rich and we don't use it. So keep your data simple enough that you can really track that growth. You can see what kind of posts get more following, get more action, get more engagement, again, depending on your purpose, and then try to replicate those. And one of the things, when students do this, you start to get more traction than you might think. And here's an example of this. This is analytics from Twitter, and it just happened to be when I took it. But one of the things I asked my students to do early on was take a look at their content calendar. Make sure you don't have 10 things going out on Tuesday and 0 things going out on a Wednesday, and finding that balance and consistency. And so what they noticed was on Wednesdays, we didn't have very many posts because we didn't do activities on Wednesdays at that time. And so they started doing a Who Knew Wednesday. And at first it was a little bit clunky. I was kind of trying to feed them some stories I knew about. And then all of a sudden they sort of got the idea and they started sharing these really unique stories. And so this particular one, this is JJ. He was a sophomore at the time. And he had worn a Kansas City Royals shirt not the same shirt, but a Kansas City Royals shirt to school every day since 6th grade. So I see this post come through. I checked with his elementary principal and his middle school principal who verified it. I knew it to be true at the high school, checked with his parents, and then they posted this. So it went out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. On Facebook, it didn't get a lot of play. It was kind of the normal people who liked it. On Instagram, it didn't get much at all. But on Twitter, where they tagged the Royals, it blew up. The Royals retweeted it. The Royals invited him to be on a podcast. The Royals gave him 6 tickets, so his whole family could come to 3 different games. And it really just blew up. And I just happened to grab this when it was starting to take off. And when you look at even the number of impressions, was like 40,000. So this was that first year as we were doing it. This was one of the first things that kind of went viral, so to speak, and it really motivated the students then to help tell those stories. And so we also connected with our local news outlets and told them anything we publish on social media, you can have, we'll share that with you. It really started to build that relationship. And then they also then would come in and interview students, again, with parent permission. For instance, this one, they came, interviewed JJ at school with his parents' permission, and then also published a nice article about him. And this started to happen over and over again because students were unearthing these stories about kids in our buildings that we never would have known about otherwise. And they, again, really started to add to the culture because it was telling stories about kids who weren't just in school activities, weren't just in athletics. Maybe it was even that kid who's, holding down 2 jobs and a really nice GPA, all those types of things. And again, always with permission from those students and awareness of what's going out. One of the things I really preach is to be authentic. I do a lot of presentations just on authentic social media. I think one of the things that we do is, as we're trying to grow our followings, is we go out and we try to, do what the person down the road is doing, or do what the big dogs are doing that are blowing up on social. And what happens is that doesn't translate well because it's not authentic. So it's okay to follow trends, figure out how they relate to your school, steal ideas from other people. I think it's the best form of flattery. It's why I like to share what a lot of our schools are doing. But think about what you do well and really lean into that too. So I shared this photo that was on a post just because I always think chemistry pictures, welding pictures, they always play well on social because there's nice action going on. This one was an okay one. It had some sparks. It was the best one the student had. And so they posted it. And the following day, I got a call from a local industry, and they said, hey, we saw that post you guys did on the welding students. And so I was, had this really proud moment, like, yeah, you guys saw that. Yeah, we're really proud of that. My students posted that, feeling really good about it. And then they said, yeah, your welding equipment's terrible. It's really outdated. And we'd like to give you up to $50,000 to redo your welding base. And I'm like, okay. So I think sometimes, by telling our very authentic story and not trying to make it Instagram pretty, good things can come. So even if you're really building that presence, I'm sure all of you you've had bond issues in the past, you have bond issues coming. Tell those authentic stories and show that throughout, because if you're not showing the very authentic crowded classrooms, or the very authentic buildings crumbling down, or the very authentic whatever it might be, until all of a sudden you're trying to tell a story about what you need in your district and need these millions of dollars for, it comes across as false. So I think just in your regular storytelling, it's okay to show some of these things that aren't necessarily perfect, because they are real and they will translate as such. So I'm going to kind of come back as we're wrapping up here. This is again from Mike Nixon, who I shared with his plan. He was the guy with no social media at the beginning. They did a lot of work, built it into their strategic plan. They happened to be using engagement by design. And I stole this slide from him because he was presenting at a conference up in Wisconsin. And so what their leadership did was their teachers all have to do their professional goals for the year. They all have to provide evidence that they are achieving or meeting their goals. And so what they did was they're having their teachers post evidence from their classrooms and then utilizing these hashtags, engagement by design, with whatever term it is that they're using and posting them on social media. So it's adding this incredible layer of authenticity to what they're doing. So now professional goals aren't just something that I have to do and I need to fill that out so I can check out at the end of the year, or what should I use for evidence? I've obviously been doing all of this. I know those things. I was a teacher for a long time and a principal charged with teacher growth. So by having them posted on social media, and this was their idea, not mine, but I would totally steal it if I was an administrator. They're now seeing these awesome pieces being shared on social of their students being engaged in different ways, because engagement can be seen in a lot of different ways. And so maybe it's even that they have choice in what they can do, but really showing that and being able to see and witness that. I also, let's see, sorry, I just had a question come up, so I wanted to see if we needed to answer that now. But so they also had where they were giving out prizes. So they had a leaderboard for each of their buildings of who was posting the most, who was getting the most approved, all of those types of things. So I really just think it's a cool idea and a great way to use that. So again, wrapping up, I think you can take some risks and have some fun. This was a school that was trying to figure out how to pay for some of the things that they were doing, not only class intercom, but their yearbook, their streaming service for their live events. And so they took this is just an example, but they took an old way of doing things and gave it new life. Where they used to always charge $100 for people to put an ad in the yearbook. And I always say, no one's going to the yearbook and flipping through to see what dentist they should go to, or what car wash they should take their car through. Those groups, those local companies give money to the school for that just because they want to support you. So what they started doing was taking that same yearbook ad, and for $300 a year, they'd post it on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And again, make sure you okay anything with your soup before you're asking for money, because I get everybody's a little bit different. In the same way, they took that same ad and students made a 30-second video, or the company could provide their own. And for $500 a year, they put that out on social media once a month. And so again, through Class Intercom or whatever other platform you're using, if you're scheduling those, you can just schedule those all out once a month, same time, and then you're done. And so great money in your pockets to really help these programs to become self-sustaining. I know this group, they were able to buy some new cameras, some new video camera switchers, sent their kids to some conferences, those kinds of things. I do have all of those resources linked here as well. And then there's that ebook again. I also want to share out to you, if you already have students creating content, or you're thinking about having them create content, we're always here to help. We have a ton of resources online. It's my passion to help with that. We are having a workshop. It's called the Content Generation Workshop on October 18th. It's here in person in Lincoln, Nebraska on October 18th during the day, but you can also stream in and watch it. And then we're looking at some satellite locations as well. So we had 30 schools across the country joining us from their schools across the country last year, and we're hoping for even more this year. So that's a great time, really, if you even start with that small group of students, to really get them excited. We do actual posting online that day with challenges and prizes and all those things. So that's a fun way to go about that too. So my contact information is on the screen. I don't know, Lori or Deb, if you had anything else you wanted before we close. Otherwise, I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you guys and share with you, and hope that we can be in touch in the future, or I can help if you need any assistance.
Well, thank you, Jill, for a really informative and engaging presentation. We had a good turnout today, and I've already received a positive text message from an individual who attended and said it was just wonderful information. And I see another message has come up in the chat. So we will send out your presentation, and we again thank you for taking the time to meet with our members. We wish you a happy 4th of July, and happy 4th of July to all of those who participated in this event. If you have a quick question, we do have about 5 minutes left, and then I'll let Jill have some closing comments.
She must have answered all the questions before we even knew we had them. I know I have lots of notes and lots of things spinning around in my head that I would be thinking about if I were in a school building right now. So it might take a little bit for questions to actually come to the surface.
You
I have
bet.
a quick question.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
This is Carrie Ardito. I'm in Roseville area schools in Minnesota, and I just had a quick question about how you balance or manage sort of your high producing schools or programs or groups versus those that are low producing. Do you assign like one per week, or how do you manage those that want to give you like 3 posts a day versus those that are less frequent?
Yeah, it's a great question and one I get a lot. And so what I've really found is that when you have those high flyers, whether it's a specific program, a building, whatever it might be, it's letting them really run. I think if they start doing too much, you might want to rein them in, but I have yet to kind of find a school that's doing too much or doesn't have that nice pacing. But it's really been positive peer pressure. I saw that personally, and then I see it all the time. Even that example I gave of Holly Kirby in Texas at the elementary, because she's having so much positive outcome, not only from her parents, but also from within the district and the competitiveness for staff within the district. It's starting to really be that positive peer pressure. I think it's also like, why are you guys always sharing stories about the high school English class, and it's coming from that teacher? So then saying, you can do this too. We'd love to get you on here and help share your story as well. So I don't think you ever want to hold anyone back or stifle anyone's storytelling because the next person isn't doing it. I'd rather see the positive peer pressure and bring them along, those later adopters or those laggards as they're sometimes called.
All right. Well, I think we can wrap up for today with one more word of thanks to Jill for offering this session to our members. And we look forward to seeing all kinds of social media posts from Minnesota schools in the next year.
Yeah, and if you guys, I was just going to close really quickly. I'm at Dr. Jill Johnson on social. So if you put something out there, tag me if you want. I love to see the cool stuff that you're doing. So great to meet everybody. And again, reach out if I can help.
Thanks, Jill.
Yep.